trying to cope, not focused on shit. Always scoped on the fix that is fixed to our wrist. And the cyst that persists from the clicks that we get is a ship that's adrift in the midst of the grift. What a trip, what a gift. What I miss? Shit. Ignorance is bliss. Welcome to the realm where they complicate pursuits, confiscate the truth, to indoctrinate the youth. Got us hopped up on the juice, cause the doctor's about to loot. Posture of imposters, cause our options are acute. Playing possum for the boot, it's lost in the obtuse. You constantly and constant for the optics you can prove. Animosity's the obstacle that obfuscates.
Hi, this is Amy B. Tonight, I'm going to actually be having a conversation with a lot of my favorite Twitter peeps that I talk to all the time on Twitter, but I've actually never spoken to any of them in person. So this should be a pretty interesting conversation. I'm sure we'll go over vaccine mandates, the critical race theory in schools and that being pushed back on, and the $600 anytime the Biden administration wanting to do the record anything as far as like $600 transactions or above, and kind of what that means. So looking forward to it.
All right, this is D-Web doing my producer thing in the background. We got Jeremy and we got John coming in for you right now, Amy.
Awesome. Hello. Jeremy, you're on mute. John, I don't think you're on mute, but I don't know if you can hear me. Can you guys both hear me? Yay. Awesome. How are you? It's nice to, I guess, meet you in person, or virtually meet you in person, I suppose.
Something like that. Am I still on mute? Can you hear me?
No, I can hear you. I can hear you.
Yeah, no. Do well. Just a heads up, I'm probably going to have to back out for a few in a little bit to help get the little one to bed. But yeah, awesome to actually like talk face to face.
I know, right?
Virtually, instead of to tweets.
I know. I was trying to get, trying to see if anyone else wanted to join in. Maybe they will come on a little bit later, but I know it was kind of last minute. But yeah, so how are you tonight?
I'm good. I'm ready for a new week. Last week was a lot of fun. It was I was out of town for work, and so I've been exhausted all weekend. But I'm good. Is that wine or water?
Oh, this would be wine. I mean, I have water too, but yeah. Cheers. Oh goodness. No, after the day that I had, so I came home. I went and stayed in Austin for the night with my son and my sister. I came home and somehow my dog jumped over the barricade for the stairs and got himself trapped. And let's just say he was up there for a while, and there was a huge mess.
I saw your message earlier. I was like, yeah, I've been there.
Yeah. So it was definitely a mess. But yeah. I mean, this format, I was kind of thinking it would be kind of interesting to, I mean, just talk to people that I've talked to on Twitter, and especially talk about like it's hard to convey thoughts fully via tweet, especially like some of the more nuanced positions. So I thought it might be kind of interesting to.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how many times, not so much. I don't think you and I think you and I are in like kind of, I don't know how you would put it, but like, there are people who are kind of on like the same frequency, and then there are some people who are on different frequencies, and sometimes those frequencies meet. But I know there's been many times I've been like towards the end of an hours long conversation and just had the sudden realization of like, oh, we're having different conversations.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that probably plays into a lot of, and it makes it so much easier for people to, I guess, think of the other side or just as like the enemy or as, bad people. And I really hate that it's kind of gotten to that point. And it used to, at least in my opinion, it used to just be on like Twitter and Facebook. But with the pandemic, it was like Twitter started becoming the world, and people just started hating each other.
Everybody
So-
puts other people in a box, and then they look at
Yeah.
everything through that box. And yeah, it's wild. I don't know how many times I've told people, it's like, look, I am not the person you were talking to right now. Like,
right. Yeah. And it's funny. My sister, she was actually because she's pretty liberal. I would obviously be more on the conservative side. And she does follow me on Twitter. She's not on Twitter very often, but she was like, it's a lot more reasonable to speak with you in person. And I'm like, well, yeah, because we can actually have that conversation, and we're not, I mean, obviously we're not going to hate each other to begin with, but you know, I think that's probably a big piece of it. And I will admit, I mean, sometimes I like to be sarcastic and snarky on Twitter, so I suppose that
Well, that's
probably plays
right.
into it.
That's the problem, is because I'm naturally kind of an asshole.
uh,
And so the problem though is like, I'm an asshole in good fun, and that doesn't
yeah.
translate very well on Twitter sometimes. And
does
so yeah,
not.
it definitely it's an interesting format. Quite honestly, I was just telling so a good friend of mine I grew up with was in town. Him and he brought his family down there doing Disney this week, and we were talking about it last night. And I was like, dude, I was able to do. I went to the place that's most difficult to have a conversation on, like what I call like mainstream internet, right? Like you go to like, you know, the underweb and 4chan and all that other crap, but like Twitter, Facebook, like the main social media sites. I was like, out of all of those, Twitter is probably the most difficult to have a conversation because you're so limited into what you can say. And so I went to Twitter. I started in 2017 with Twitter, and I've been able to have like real conversations with actual people, and the hardest place to do it. And I was like, screw it, I win the internet. You know?
Well, and it's really funny. Actually, I'm going to turn my light on. It just got really dark.
Hey,
But
sorry
I'll
to
be
cut
right
you
back.
off, Amy. You
Yeah.
there? Yeah, I'm letting
Yeah,
Jeff
I'm
in
here.
right now.
Okay, awesome. I'm turning my light on.
So now we had dark
There
Amy.
we go.
Now we got light.
Yeah,
Amy.
I know. With lighting, it started off as being great lighting, but the sun's going down. So, hi, Jeff. But yeah, that we were actually just talking about how weird and interesting Twitter is, and just as far as like having conversations. And one thing that I was actually going to mention is it is kind of interesting how, I don't know if it was like this for you, but when I started off on Twitter, it was, you know, I'd go into conversations, I'd have just random interactions, but the more frequently that I was on it, it's like I started developing Twitter friendships and became part of a Twitter clique. And so I hang out with the same people on Twitter pretty frequently, which I know that sounds kind of weird unless, you know, you're probably on social media as frequently as I am.
It's a weird, I mean, it's a weird dynamic, and it's one that it's been nice, right? Because so things have changed in the past couple of years. Like, so, you know, I'm just started a new job because I lost my previous gig when COVID started. But prior to that, I mean, I lived on the road. And so, you know, I didn't really have like a social life where I lived because I was never there. And so, you know, I mean, I had social life with the students that I would talk with when I travel and whatnot. I mean, you know, we would engage and whatnot. But as far as like consistent people that I had conversations with, it was all people on social media. And, you know, talking about like Twitter, the thing that surprised me the most was, you know, for years up to that, because I mean, I lived on the road for many years. Facebook was kind of the place where I was able to keep in contact with all my Marine buddies and family and friends I knew growing up. And Twitter just kind of became like a new place to kind of check out and whatnot with, you know, the last few years. And over the last few years, especially with COVID, I can't even talk to people on Facebook anymore. It's like, I don't even know what you could say to kind of describe it, as much as it feels like, you know, everything's so out of sync.
Yeah, it's I know for me, because I was on Facebook quite a bit more. I even prior to COVID, I kind of shifted away from Facebook, but it was just, I mean, it's obviously my full real name. It's my full real outside of social media life.
Yeah.
And I'm not wanting to, I have a lot of family and friends who are going to have different views than me. I'm not necessarily wanting to start fights or controversies with them. Not that I necessarily want to do that on, okay, no, I take that back. Sometimes I want to do that on Twitter, but
Sometimes we all feel feisty.
yeah, exactly. But I think that probably had a lot to do with it. And then I don't know. I mean, maybe just part of it was the format. I think there's probably a wide range, and then also for the most part, I guess I probably didn't get into Facebook that horribly much. The only interactions that I ever had were with people that I was like friends with, so I wasn't actually talking to anyone on any of the other boards.
Yeah, well, Facebook.
It's
got
nice to
really
meet
big.
you. No, I'm sorry. I was just going to say, nice to meet you. My name is Jeff Metcalf. I'm sure you've seen me on there.
I've seen you.
And
I know you are.
yeah. And I actually made good friends with Joe Garza.
Oh,
Are you
okay.
familiar? Joe says he.
Yes.
Yeah.
I know. I know he is.
Yeah. And so we actually have Skypes that we do probably once every 3-4 weeks. We have a lot in common. He's a guitar player like I am, and similar sort of views. And I don't get to talk to many people who. That's why I jumped at this opportunity to meet some of these folks that I've been sort of positive, having good conversations and sort of with. So similar things there, but
there's been a couple people that I've met actually in person from Twitter. I mean, within the Texas area. Yeah, there's like, I think 2 or 3 individuals that I've actually met in person. So that was pretty neat. But yeah, for the most part, it's been, I haven't done any Zoom virtual things. Last week I kind of sporadically put something up because I was like, you know what? Let's see if anyone would be interested in chatting. And that it was a pretty neat convo, like actually being able to talk to some of the people that I had been interacting with for a little while. But
thanks for putting it together. I appreciate that. Yeah.
Oh, you're welcome. So one thing that I've been kind of thinking about, and like this is what going on to the topics, I've been kind of thinking about like the whole $600 that where they want to have reporting from the banks, the Biden administration, for any $600 or more transactions. And I'm actually quite concerned about that for a couple of reasons. I guess before I jump into them, like, what are your thoughts? Or like, what are y'all's thoughts on
Y'all's?
What do you think, Jeremy?
So I've not dug into the details too much because the first glance into it, I see one side seems like it's there's like this weird thing that happens where there's like the dual reporting, as I think of it, where it seems pretty obvious that what they're doing is trying to, and they play with the words, right? So it's not so much, I guess, I was reading something on it earlier, it's not so much that they're wanting to track every transaction that's greater than $600, but they're wanting basically the info for the accounts on any account that has an inflow of more than $600 in a year. And I'm like, well, what's the difference?
So here's kind of my concern about it. Like, that I agree with you. Like, there would be no reason why the federal government would have any interest in, tracking everyone's account that has a transaction of $600 or more. I mean, they just wouldn't. But in the instance of like January 6th, like where you have all that going on, well, now if that's in place, there doesn't need to be any warrants. And it obviously doesn't just apply to the January 6th situation. I mean, any type of law enforcement issue that comes up, or any type of, it doesn't even have to be a law enforcement issue. Like there's no warrant that's required to start being like, oh, well, we don't
Right.
like what you're doing, so this is in place, so we're just going to start utilizing it to focus on you.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah, it's
I
a lot
think,
like the Patriot Act, right? The Patriot Act.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
it's an extension of it. It's just instead of $10,000,
Yeah.
now it's $600. $600 because they want to make sure that the billionaires pay their fair
Yeah.
share.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, that's really so transparently dumb, isn't it?
billionaires and their $600 transaction.
Right, exactly. I know, and they're $600 transactions. Literally, I could be working for $10 an hour and get 40 hours a week and get a paycheck every 2 weeks, and that's going to be over $600.
Well, that was, I
So-
saw someone did the math and they said that's weird how it just factors out to that if you do a $15 minimum wage and take out the average, federal tax, state tax, and Medicare, then it works out to be about a $600 paycheck.
Oh,
like,
I didn't
that's
even.
funny.
That is.
Yeah, I
that
don't
is rather
remember. I don't remember where I
interesting.
saw that at. I looked at the math just brief enough. I was kind of like, it's about right. That is kind of
Yeah,
funny.
I mean it. Yeah, I mean that's certainly something that, like, if I wanted to sit down and go through all that math, yeah, I mean it's not all that math, but sit down and calculate it out, yeah, it wouldn't surprise me, because I was calculating it out like as gross income, because I wanted to see if. So I know that the federal minimum wage is still $7.25, and I wanted to see how close that was gross, and I think that comes out to $5.80 if you're doing 40-hour work week. Which that's another thing. Like, I mean, I have no issues with areas doing minimum wages, or the towns, even states, and like the local businesses, individuals, whatever, voting on that. But it's so strange to me. Like, how does it make sense to anyone that a living wage in Brownsville, Texas is going to be a living wage in San Francisco, California?
Do you expect any of this stuff to make sense?
No,
I mean, at this
not
point,
anymore.
like the $600 thing, like there's the part of me just wants to be like, that'll never pass. That's so illegal. It's not even funny. And then I look at everything else that's gone on the last year. I'm just like,
Well, and what they're doing. So one of the conversations that I've had, so especially on the conservative side, with the vaccine mandates, and they're smart about this, because they know that if they try to do like a full-on federal push, although they are getting more aggressive, but if they try to do a full-on federal push, that you're going to have an immediate backlash from the conservative side, and they're going to have a pretty big fight on their hands. But what they're doing is they're not mandating anything, but they are very much influencing through OSHA in particular. They're really influencing companies so that it makes sense for them to do a vaccine mandate. It actually is greatly in their best interest. And for a couple of reasons, because what they've done through OSHA is they have two different standards for the vaccinated and the unvaccinated, to where if you are, the way that they have it worded is they're basically setting it up to where if you're unvaccinated, unless your employer does all these certain hoops that they have to jump through, which would be like the 6 feet apart, the masking, the plexiglass, a lot of the things that you'd see like at a restaurant or at a grocery store. But unless that is being done, like even say in an office setting, then they not so subtly imply that, oh, well, they can, if that individual catches COVID, then there is legal recourse that individual may have underneath I think it was like 1978, I believe it was the OSHA Act. But that does not apply to vaccinated individuals. And then the other thing that they did was that OSHA said that reporting on adverse effects due to the vaccine because of mandated vaccinations, that's not something that needs to be reported through OSHA, therefore workman's comp, all that fun stuff. I think the statute will be up in March or April of 2022, I believe 2022. So I mean, I don't know what that would look like, at that point, if it'd get extended or what would happen, but I mean, it's a pretty big.
I think one of the things to sort of put perspective around this, I don't know if you saw the tweet from Thomas Massey yesterday or the day before.
I did.
Where he
did see it.
He made
yeah.
I saw many
made
tweets
the point
from
that
him.
Congress hasn't voted for any of this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think about that, and it's like it's really hard to put your mind around how one person is effectively making these decisions.
You know what it is? It's not even one person making. What they're effectively doing is they are basically they're transferring power to the CDC. They're transferring power to the FDA, to these bureaucratic entities. And how did the CDC eviction moratorium? Who is the CDC to say anything about evictions?
I have a lot of thoughts on this stuff, and I'd be glad to talk about them. But I mean, unfortunately, we're celebrating my birthday today, so I'm gonna step out to have some cake with my family, and then I'll be back a little later. You said you're going for 2 hours, right?
It's a hard stop at 2 hours. If it ends up going shorter, it's kind of up in the air.
Okay. All right. Well, I might be back in about maybe 15, 20 minutes or so.
Okay. Sounds good. Happy birthday, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, happy birthday, man.
Yeah, 22, right?
Yeah, that'd be nice. All right, I'll be back.
I'd like to be in my 20s again.
Oh,
I heard
gosh,
myself sleeping the other night. I don't even know how you do that.
How what?
Because I heard myself sleeping the other night. I'm not even sure how you do that. Like woke up and I was like, I think I broke my neck asleep. How?
Yeah.
It's like apparently I'm at that age. So funny story. It was like I had an accident when I was like 12, jumping a bike, like landed on my head, pulled all the muscles in my like upper shoulder. I told my friend, I was like, apparently I'm at the age where I get to remember all of the injuries I forgot about.
I just like being, if I could have the body and metabolism of my 20s, but the money and I guess experience that I have now, like just combine those two.
Yeah, if only, right?
Yeah.
If only.
Not that I'm making like a whole lot of money or anything, but I'm definitely making more than what I was making in my 20s. So.
But yeah, what Metcalf was saying about the Congress thing is a good point. Like, it's all and it's been trending this way for a long time. Like I remember when Obama was president, and he was just doing all these laws by fiat, excuse me, executive order, and I was like, y'all gonna regret this. And then we got Trump, and where Trump did the same shit, and everybody wanted to complain about it. And I was like, look, I hear you, but told you. And then now we're having the same, and it's just trending. And what they're doing is they're siphoning all that power from Congress off to the executive branch through all their little agencies.
Well, and because I started reading into a lot of it, because I was like, how is this all happening? I mean, because basically you have the health secretary who currently has a significant amount of power because we're in an emergency situation, which I'm like, of course we're still in an emergency situation. We're just going to be in that situation for as long as they can continue that situation.
As long as they can get away with it.
Yeah, because it does transfer so much power to them. It also allows for, so there's the PrEP Act, and really it all Well, okay. So it didn't all start, but a lot of it really did start underneath the Bush administration with the Patriot Act and a lot of the bills that were pushed back then. And so, and I was still in college under his administration, so I wasn't political at all. So I wasn't.
I didn't pay attention to any of it until 2008. Like none of it. I didn't care. Like I was in the Marines from 01 to 06. I got out and I was trying to, and honestly, I wouldn't have cared if it wasn't for the fact in 08, they had all of those people, like they made everything on our campus got really political in 08. And it was all of this, like, it was all of this stuff. Like 08 was my first run in with like wokeism. And I was like,
the wokeism,
no, stay away. And, and I've kind of been just not able to, look away from it ever since. But
well, and I remember getting very annoyed actually at the first company that I worked with after college. And I couldn't even pinpoint why I was annoyed at the time. But what it was they kept talking about how many women they were empowering, how many women they had in executive and like leadership positions. And my thought process on it was, I was like, that's fantastic. Why don't you promote those individuals? What does their vagina have to do with them succeeding? Like, so it always rubbed me the wrong way. And it really wasn't up until I guess more recently when I was able to articulate and like pinpoint it a little bit better. But yeah, so yeah, definitely the wokeism. I mean, I know here in Texas, they're very upset about a bill that was just passed. And
do you think it all ties in together?
Yes, absolutely. Right. Yeah.
Well, I know a lot of people it seems like a lot of people they take the idea that all of the stuff is connected. They take it as like some conspiracy theory. And I'm like, bro, it would be a conspiracy theory for it not to be connected. Like there's a bunch of weird stuff going on and has been going on and been building up to this. And so yeah, it's a hell of a time to be alive. That's all I can say.
And so going to and speaking of conspiracy realm, so the whole January.
This wasn't on the list of topics.
No. This is trust me. This was totally. It ties into actually the $600 Biden proposal to get those billionaires and whatnot. But the January 6th situation. I've been following that. I mean, as closely as I can. It's pretty difficult to follow what's legally going on because there's so much that they're withholding because it's a threat to national security and whatnot, but also at the same time they're saying
the worst thing since 9/11.
Yeah, worse. Oh no, it's worse than 9/11.
Yeah.
Well, and then now they're kind of backtracking a little bit and saying, well, yes, there were FBI, like the FBI knew about it, but like there just wasn't the intel to indicate that it was this big organized ring. And it's like, okay, well then that begs the next question. So if it wasn't this organized situation, why can't you release a lot of the evidence for these individuals that you are currently with due process rights to? I mean, if these individuals,
because I know there's been several. There's several of those guys that because I've not. I kind of follow the highlights of multiple things. So it's difficult to like dive into any individual one. But I did catch where it's like there's a lot of guys just basically being held without bail, isn't there?
Yes.
It's wild to me. Like that is. It's gross to me as a Marine. But yeah, it's just I know stuff like that has happened in our history, and there's a lot of corruption with the Department of Justice and stuff that goes on. But the fact that it's going on like this, in such a skewed manner is just
well, and it has made me really reevaluate. like I said, I really didn't pay too much attention with what was going on with the Patriot Act at the time, but it has made me go back and really read a lot of the acts and the bills that were passed at the time, and then also what was going on. I know Glenn Greenwald has been a huge voice in that area, and now he's it's so interesting. Now he's apparently on the right.
Never saw that one coming.
Yeah, I know, right?
I was just like, really? Glenn is right here?
Yeah.
Boy.
They're like you went on Tucker Carlson, you're on the right. And it's like, well, but he's consistent. I mean, he's saying the exact same, he's bringing up the exact same issues that he was bringing up back when he was talking about this underneath the Bush administration and what was going on back then. And so, yes, I think where it's really connected is when you start redefining ambiguous, like terms ambiguously. So let's take white supremacy, for example. What does that even mean today? Because I don't know.
Anti-racism, as far as I'm concerned, but that's
well, exactly, and that's a moving target. It's a moving target. They keep changing.
It's
exactly.
A bogeyman.
Yeah, they keep changing exactly what it means. I mean, you can be a white supremacist if you believe in that you should have gifted classes at school. You're a white supremacist. I mean, they attach it to everything. And then now you have our federal government coming out and the CDC coming out and saying that racism is a federal health emergency along with other emergency yada yada. And but they don't even define it. Okay, how is it an emergency?
I want to tie that and the $600 thing and one of the other topics in, because at the end of the day, it's when you make those terms mean nothing, you can make anything mean those terms. Yeah. Right. So you have the $600 thing where now I mean, let's be honest, right? Like, because like I said, I read the thing where it's like, oh no, it's not tracking every transaction that's $600. It's just tracking accounts that get more $600 in a year. And I'm like, what account does not have more than $600 come into it a year? Like, no account that no one cares about. So now you've got the ability to track all of that, combined
and pick and choose.
Yeah, well, then combined with the fact that, you know, like, to throw in that in one of your other topics you mentioned, the whole, you know, these parents concerned over their school districts being terrorists. I'm like, we've entered a true postmodern age where words mean whatever the hell people with power want them to mean.
Yeah, and, absolutely.
And it's incredible to me because, and what they're doing is they're going, well, here's who has power, and so that's the bad people. And then never mind that those people don't even really exist, let alone have power. They've all got their thing to point at. And so everything just becomes this game of whoever can give the better story from a position of authority. And it's really incredible to watch happen.
Well, and it also sets up a situation to where, I mean, especially since we are so polarized, it sets up a situation where these policies and these initiatives are being implemented or expanded. I mean, expanded from the Patriot Act. And there is no opposition. In fact, there's a whole lot of support because, yeah, there was an insurrection. Let's get those white supremacists. Like that's what our main focus is. So yeah, we have to implement all of these things in order to stop those white supremacists. And it's like, okay, hold on. It's like, okay, so taking white supremacists out of the equation, what laws don't we already have in place that are not adequate to prosecute the individuals who did assault police officers, who did engage in property destruction, etc. Why aren't those laws sufficient? Why does it need to be expanded to be this very ambiguous terminology? And then also expand the powers of the Capitol Police, because that's another thing that they're doing, to be able to not only arrest, but also start opening up field offices in jurisdictions outside of Washington, D.C. Like, you can't FOIA the Capitol Police. That's
Would you see, because I remember that was a thing 10 years ago, that it was talking about how Obama's administration started talking about a federal police force. And
I think that's what they're pushing towards.
That's what it's, because like I heard at the time and I was like, that'll never happen. And of course, there was lots of things I said would never happen that here we are in 2021.
I know, right?
But it definitely seems like, it seems like that there's all of these things that are occurring, that, the total visibility over transactions.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know what you would call it. The power of directing the public's attention, so to say, if that makes any sense, right? Because that's we talk about, like, these terms like white supremacists and Nazis, and how it's, we need to do these things because we got to stop this, internal terrorist threat, and it's all story-driven narrative.
Yeah.
I'm a nerd. I've ran D&D games. I know how this shit works. Like, I see a build up when I know a build up when I see one. And
and if there's a domestic terrorist plot that they're investigating, and they're in and it's an actual plot, that makes sense to investigate and go through the proper channels. But we're not even defining terms anymore.
They're turning it. It's become entertainment. They've turned it into entertainment for the news cycle, right? Because it's no longer about investigating something. It's about keeping people's eyes glued to the tube as they follow this week's mystery hunt into whatever villain they're after, is what it seems like. And it's, I don't know.
It's quite apparent.
What's that?
It's quite apparent that I don't know how anyone at this point, especially after the whole Hunter Biden thing, how
it makes me feel insane, because
it really does.
Because you're just like, bro, and they're like, that's overblown. This is the real issue. I'm like, but dude,
you know what's been making me feel insane? The whole vaccine thing has really been probably my main topic for a little while. I mean, I'm sure you could, looking at my Twitter feed, I mean, that's probably one of my main topics, but I've delved a lot into it, and I've done quite a bit of like early research. So back in May and June, I've been reading the SEC filings that they all have to do fairly regularly. Although now that they're EUA approved, and they're really not releasing much more data. But in May, Moderna in particular came out with an SEC filing that was concerning, and they were talking about these breakthrough cases and how that was a potential concern. And I was mentioning at the time in June, I was like, I suspect that 6 to 8 months, you're going to have to get a booster. Just based on the data that I am seeing, I was like, don't think that this prevents transmission. There have been 0 studies to indicate that it prevents transmission. That was never something that they studied. And I remember I got pummeled for it, like on Twitter, where it was just like, no, there's been of course it prevents transmission, blah, blah, blah. And then what's so strange is now I can say the same thing, and they're like, well, yeah, of course that happened. Like, not every vaccine's perfect. You have breakthrough cases.
You're gonna have that. Yeah.
And boosters aren't uncommon. Like it's like, I'm not saying that they're not uncommon. I get that, but this is not what we were told this was. And it's fine if they had just been completely honest, like from the get-go, which they clearly were not. They clearly were not. Like the data did not support, it actually still doesn't support the things that they are saying. We don't know. We don't know how.
Sorry. Gonna have to edit that one for sure. Damn, man.
I mean,
just throwing jokes out there like
I apologize. I'm gonna stay in the back. I'm gonna stay producing. I'm not gonna say anything. I'm done.
Join us.
Yes.
By the way, man, it is a pleasure to actually meet you face to face.
Hey man, appreciate it, Jeremy, man. Yeah, like I said, I've been kind of pushing Amy. I'm like, Amy, I need you to star in this. You know what I'm saying? But and I want to do the background thing. I'm already on like 3 podcasts right now. I'm like, I have no time to do anything in life. So
See, but he has such a voice for podcasting. I mean,
he's got that like very mellow.
I know, right?
Well,
Okay.
making a black man blush. Y'all guys are impressive. Y'all impressive bunch of people. I tell you that. But I'm enjoying the conversation. I'm gonna step back and let y'all continue the conversation. I'm sorry. I won't throw any more random jokes out there. I promise.
No, continue with
That's fantastic.
All right, man. Good talking to you.
He said that he needed to get a polio booster for anyone who's wondering what we're laughing about.
Oh, and I got Jimmy Concepts coming in, just FYI.
Oh, really?
Oh, yay. Yeah. Oh, wow. It'll be
So
interesting
special.
to actually, yeah. That would actually be interesting. I've chatted with him quite a bit. Hey,
He's
how are
still
you?
audio.
Huh?
He's still connecting to audio.
Oh, he's still connecting audio.
How we get video before audio?
I don't know. I was having issues with the first time I did this. I was actually having some issues with the audio piece.
There we go. What's up, man?
You're on mute.
Ah.
But yeah, like I don't know. Yeah, the whole vaccine, and it is so insane to me how people are now like, I mean, it's only been 2 months. It's been 2 months, and they're like, well, yeah, boosters. I mean, they're such a common thing. Like, I don't know why it's such a surprise that we have a booster. I'm like you were,
Dude,
I don't know.
I told people I told people from the outset because you know, some of our friends around in the bubble there on Twitter. I was like, look, I ain't gonna tell anybody what they should or should not do. I'm just telling you, I ain't doing it. Like, because and I told a couple people on there, I was like, the more you tell me that I need to, the more I'm not going to. Like, I spent 5 years in the military, and I had to take every damn shot they gave at me. And God only knows, I mean, how many of some of the, granted, thankfully, they're you know, some minor health issues I've been dealing with. But I mean, for all I know, I've got some health issues that I've been dealing with since I was in. How do I know they're not caused by that? No way to know. You know, because they were poking us with all sorts of crazy stuff. And it's like, look, government does not own my body anymore, and they do not get to say what's going to go in it. And yeah, and we're just I was that place where it's like, no, not happening.
I was actually fully intending on getting the vaccine probably around this time. So I had COVID last September, and so my thought process was, okay, I know that I have natural immunity. I will go ahead and hold off probably until September to get vaccinated. If everything looks like it's panning out like they said it's going to pan out, which by the way, it's not. And that was my thought process. I had more faith in the vaccine in April than I do now. And it has absolutely nothing to do with misinformation on Facebook or whatever else, CNN and they want to blame it on.
That drives me nuts. I get told so often, like, you need to stop listening to so and so. Not to make a throw up to somebody in the current chat, but yeah, I get told all the time, like, you need to stop listening to so and so, and they're reading you wrong. I was like, dude, I'm not getting my opinions from other people. I'm just watching.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's. And I just saw some video going around earlier. It was, I guess they're talking the efficacy of the vaccine down now is just so damn low that, I mean, I saw one like 20% now after Israel or something. I don't know. I can't keep up. There's so much information so fast. It's just too much.
Well, and then the other thing that I was looking at, and as soon as you say that, like as soon as you even mention bears, it's just an automatic, we're going to shut you down.
I know.
Type of it. But the thing is, so I was looking at the VAERS data again last night, and I'm not an idiot. I know how VAERS works. I know that it is a system where they're able to go in and record correlations, and then you see if there's patterns, or you're supposed to see if there's patterns. I don't think that they're really looking at it. But what I did last night was I went through and I just did up to age 17. I wanted to see how many deaths there were and then how many adverse effects there were and what those different cases were and what they looked like. And deaths, and mind you, there's only been, there's been less than 1 million, I believe, under the age of 17 who have been vaccinated, fully vaccinated. And there's 25 deaths recorded in VAERS. I mean, now going through some of those, they're probably
last I heard it was more than 25, but I don't know.
But that was specific to up to the age of 17.
Okay. Oh, so, okay. I hear you. Yeah.
Up to the age of 17. No, once you start manipulating the data a little, it gets significantly higher. But then there's a lot of adverse effects because I started looking at life-threatening or permanent disability, and it starts going up pretty quickly. And I'm sorry, but I don't see the cost benefit. I don't see how that works for that age range. I don't even see how it works for, I'd say the age range. I mean, and individuals, they're all going to have their different situations. Like I'm in my 30s, I already had COVID. I'm not concerned about it, but
yeah,
people have their different situations. There's just, how are we not even looking at VAERS?
Well, the issue with the VAERS data drives me nuts because it's like you try to first off, I get the data is dirty, right? Like all of this data is dirty. This is a global pandemic that has occurred and is ongoing. And everybody wants to try and everybody wants to be like data. It's like, look, I'm a data scientist, maybe not a very good one, but I'm enough a one to go, and look at this and go, this data is dirtier than crap. And and then when you add to that the fact that you have this situation where, you try to bring up data like VAERS data, and people are like, well, that's VAERS, so we're just going to ignore that. I'm like, how are you going to ignore it? Because at that point, all they're doing is saying well, I'm just only going to care about the official numbers. And I'm like, okay, but if they're lying to you, you're like, oh, well, then everybody's lying. I'm like, well, welcome to people.
Well, and the big issue that I have with discounting VAERS like we are is, I mean, we have an unprecedented amount of reports that are going into VAERS. It hasn't even been, it's been what, half a year? And I get that this is a slightly different situation. There's a lot more, there's a lot more pressure to get it than, some of the other vaccines. So that probably plays a little bit of a factor. But when you're talking about mandates, it is the responsibility of the individual or the entity who is trying to implement the mandate to prove that it is safe, or at least safe enough or effective. They haven't done that. and there's a refusal. And I mean, there was actually someone on Twitter today who was like, oh, should they just go through and autopsy all of them? I'm like, they should be, I mean, there should be an investigation. I'm like,
dumbass arguments people go to.
I know. I'm
Oh
like,
my gosh.
why shouldn't, am I just supposed to just take, so all these reports are coming in and I'm supposed to take
Amy,
the position.
You just need to have faith.
I know.
You just need to have
faith. Yeah, gosh. The science. We'll just have faith in the science.
Saint Fauci will take care
Yeah.
of it.
But yeah, I mean, it's basically, it's taking the position of that there's these reports that are coming in and we're going to assume that none of them mean anything or none of them have any validity or anything to do with like the vaccine and adverse effects with the vaccine. And that's how we're going to operate. Whereas I'm like, or what if our public health officials who we pay a whole bunch of taxes to and stuff, what if they, I don't know, like actually investigate what's going on? And I'm sorry, another thing, I'm on a little bit of a rant. Like, how are we supposed to, yeah, I know. How are we supposed to just, I mean, so Pfizer, Moderna, the pharmaceutical companies who are going to be making, you know, tens of billions of dollars off of these vaccines. I mean, they haven't released all the data and we're just, they had their internal study, like they were like, oh, we conducted the study. We had our scientists who we pay and who probably make bonuses off of, you know, these vaccine sales, and yeah, just trust us. It's like, oh, okay, Pfizer, because you guys haven't done anything in the past that would breach that trust, have you guys?
Yeah, it's a heck of a thing to see. It's like I said, the thing that surprised me, I think, the most is like you're talking about, where it's, you know, it's I expect, I don't know what you would call the people in the positions they're in trying to make it happen. Like I expect them to lie. I expect them to push the nonsense. What has been, I think, the most disconcerting thing for me the past couple of years is how many people just jump right into buying it. And like, and to be clear, like it, you know, there are those who are kind of like skeptical of all of it, and they try to be like, look, you know, I don't know. But then there are those that are like, they're very much like, you know, excuse me, on the team of like, you know, oh, well, obviously this is on the level. I'm like, how can you think this is on the level?
I mean, that's been going on for like back to what you asked earlier with things being interconnected. It kind of goes back to like what's going on with the school systems right now and how, oh, it's like if you oppose having like if you oppose having teachers talk about how, you know, white people are bad or whatever, or how whiteness is bad, then you are opposing talking about past racism. And it's like, no, it's not what we said at all. But
yeah, that one's been a recent one that's really surprised me. They're like, oh, you're against CRT, you're against teaching honest history. And I'm like, how are you getting those two things together?
Honest history.
It's so damn dishonest. I can see the smirk. Yeah.
All right, folks, I'm back. Sorry.
What's up, man? Hey,
yay!
Which is great timing because I actually need to step away for probably about 10 or 15 myself, take care of a little one like I was talking about. But I'll be back here in a few, all right?
Yeah.
All right, sounds good.
All right. Look forward to talking to you all then.
How was the birthday cake?
Oh, it was good. Thanks. Yeah, my 12-year-old daughter baked it, and my 13-year-old son ate it.
You know what? I am really good at baking store-bought cookies. Like that's probably my specialty.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yep. Thanks. So you guys talking about some interesting things?
Well, there was the vaccine just the weirdness around it. And then we kind of shifted into just how the narrative keeps switching, like within the public school system, and what is considered real history and teaching real history and what that looks like. I don't even, it's like nothing is real anymore unless it is what they're putting out as like whatever the entities are saying, like the administration is saying is real, whether it's with vaccines or, I mean, heaven forbid you look at any of the contradicting like evidence. I mean, that doesn't matter. I mean, the whole, did you hear about the whole Loudoun school district situation?
Oh yeah.
In Virginia?
Yeah, I don't know much details. I saw chatter about it and some kind of trans issue, but not really a lot of detail. I mean, I don't really spend as much time on Twitter as I used to, because I think it can get very addictive. And if I and if I spend too much time on it, I don't spend enough time doing my work. So I need to focus.
That's why I have 3 computer screens, so I can have one for Twitter and one for my email and one for work. Yeah, I know. But so there's a case with the Loudoun school district in Virginia where basically they've passed a recent policy where it's supposed to be more inclusive and diversity and all that, which is fine. But one of the parts of the policy also includes that whatever gender you identify as, you also are able to use those sex segregated spaces because you are that gender now. And so that is what a lot of the parents and teachers have been pushing back on, understandably so. Recently there was a rape case, then which was backed up by, like, there was another individual who was sexually assaulted in the restroom. And the school district, from what I've seen, they were just trying to push it under the rug and basically ignore it because it doesn't, it goes against the narrative and the inclusivity that they're trying to foster. Inclusivity. And so that's been a pretty big controversy. And then I get, from what it sounds like right now, there's 3 teachers who are actually taking they're fighting this policy. They're taking it to court, and the ACLU in Virginia just put out a tweet basically saying, they're like, oh, it's because of they don't want to respect pronouns.
What a mess they've become, the ACLU. I mean, they have, I'm just turning, 53 in a couple of days. And I remember when I was, a teenager, my mother, my parents actually both worked in the prison. My father, neither of them guards. I mean, my mom worked as a kind of like a secretarial type of role in the office. And my dad worked with high clearance prisoners, teaching them how to do, practical things like doing masonry work, very blue collar upbringing. And she used to complain about how, they would go out of their way to defend some type of, certain types of outrageous things that prisoners would want. I remember all the different details. But but I mean, in retrospect, I'm far more, sort of libertarian minded now and civil libertarian minded. And I could see that there would be a lot of important things that they would want to do to make sure that prisons aren't, abusing prisoners and things like that.
They were,
but it just seems like
fire.org, from a speech perspective, it seems like that's what the ACLU LU was back
Mhm.
in the day.
Right.
Um,
That's what I was getting at, actually. Yeah.
Yeah. There's, I mean, shoot, this entire past year has really, I mean, it's actually made me really look into a lot of topics that I didn't even really think, like the Patriot Act, for example, and what happened after 9/11. That was never something that I even ever thought about or cared about at the time.
Yeah.
And I've been reading through just so currently, and like with the PrEP Act today and what the health secretary has been able to do and the amount of power that he's essentially able to not only have but disperse, because he's able to basically provide immunity to a lot of the to any of the companies who are like the vaccine companies, anyone who is
Now, by he,
manufacturing.
you mean President Biden? By he, you
I,
mean President Biden, or?
I mean, yes, it would be under
Okay.
the Biden administration,
Yeah,
but it's
got it.
actually the health secretary, like the Secretary of Health, who technically has
Oh, okay. Yeah.
the power. But I mean, he's serving under the Biden administration right now, so like,
Yeah.
I don't know how all that necessarily intertwines and how all that works, but
Yeah.
there's a lot of power that they currently have, and there's a lot of immunity that they're able to provide these companies. And then when I look at, like with just the NAID, and then also the NIH, with the money that they're basically partial owner of the spike protein patents, and so which I don't know enough about, like the legal situation there, but in my mind, it seems like there's a little bit of a conflict of interest if you are profiting off of the very industry and the drugs that you are also supposed to be regulating. Like, I don't know, seems like that might be an issue.
Yeah. It does seem. I mean, I remember we used to have a very solid ethos of watching out for conflicts of interest. And it just seems like that's all gone out the window. As long as the conflict of interests are in one particular direction, and they could find ways to rationalize them, for whether it be public health or other kinds of interests, that all of a sudden all of the the rule, maybe not rules, but the sort of ethics and the ethos of conflicts of interest just don't seem to be important anymore.
I mean, I'm sure that there's always been issues there, just in general, but yeah, I don't know what it certainly seems like we're currently in a situation, especially with the way that the emergency situation, or like the emergency act, is put into place and what it applies to, that it really does kind of backhandedly grant a lot of power to these bureaucratic agencies that are entirely unelected, and they're like,
exactly,
they're not going to leave office. Like, they don't have to get reelected. Like, they're just there. I mean, Fauci's been there.
I mean, this is
forever.
Effectively the deep state, right? I mean, this is the deep state. This is what it is, right? Is basically a sort of unelected bureaucracy that not very similar to what Eisenhower was warning about with the military-industrial complex. That's what it is. It's the intertwining, the fascist intertwining of private business and the state.
And then it gets even better, because when you're talking about with public companies, there's activist investors, and you have activist investors. I mean, they can come in many forms, but probably one of the most influential forms right now would be activist investors who are fiduciaries over like public pensions. And ESG is a very, I mean, it sounds nice. It's like, oh, environmental, social justice, and governance. And yeah, we want to, but the problem is those terms are not well defined. And when you're talking about these fiduciaries over these huge public, these like these pensions, if you're a teacher in California, you can't opt out of that pension. You can't be like, you know what? I feel like my money is going to be better in a private 401k.
Yeah.
You're just not able to do that. So what we've been seeing, and there's proxy war, and it's something that I'm still trying to research, but there's been a pretty effective way that these activist investors, and then also just activists in general, have been able to influence the boards at public companies. So like your Southwest or your United. And that has been, I suspect that has been an issue because you'll have, I mean, you'll have these activist campaigns against, you know, we saw it not that long ago with in Georgia, I guess I think it was Home Depot, and it was one of the airlines where they were like, oh, if they're not backing these racist voter laws, or if they're not if they're not against these racist voter laws, then they were just going after these companies. And then of course the entire media is also buying into it, which that one's interesting. I don't know. I wonder why is there such a huge segment? I mean, it's like they all get the same memo every single day.
Yeah, I mean,
where does that come from?
I struggle with is trying to find the right boundary between, you know, understanding what's going on and not being sort of falling down this rabbit hole of conspiracy theories, right? That violate Occam's razor and don't make any sense, right? Because clearly there's the grand narrative conspiracy theories that I think just are not plausible. You know, you can't. How could you align and coordinate in secret, you know, that level of complexity? But really,
I think about the Rothschilds. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, I mean, but really, what I think is happening is it's just really an alignment of incentives and interests that I think to the point where you don't have to coordinate it, right? Because so much, you know, so much is not, you know, like think about Antifa, right? Antifa operates in a model where there is no leadership, right? They're basically sorry, they are decentralized. Right?
They are decentralized,
right? And so I think that the way you would coordinate that is by maybe gentle pressure or mild pressure in certain areas, you know, by certain interests, you know, like the World Economic Forum, you know, people that you know, are very rich and powerful, that own, you know, and have deep tentacles into all these corporations and can push, you know, these things. But you don't have to do it in a manner that's like, you know, completely overt, or at least they would depend upon, you know, all kinds of obfuscation and other means to avoid detecting if you're at that kind of master sort of coordinating level. But that's why I think a lot of it is just an alignment of interests too, right? And how you tell the difference.
Yeah, I mean, yes, I would agree, but I would also disagree. So I do think that you're right. I do think that, I mean, there is an alignment, obviously, of interest, and they're not secretive about who goes to Davos every year and like who participates within the WEF. So I mean, you have IBM, you have Microsoft, you have all your major companies, especially your tech companies who are involved, but not just them. And so so they have their aligned interests. But I think where it starts to really get insidious is, I mean, so you do also have, so what I started to do was I started looking at some of the speakers that they would have, and I noticed that they were coming from, like they were the head of the CDC, or they were the head of this other agency within the US, or at any other, within any other country, which that in itself isn't necessarily bad. But when we're seeing this concerted effort to really shut down any organizations like small businesses or even medium-sized businesses who are not on the same page with what they're wanting to implement, then I think it's a little bit more than just happenstance, I suppose. My personal opinion, I think that the goal is the UN SDGs, and so the 2030 plan that they have, and then they also have the 2050 plan. And I mean, they have
lots of plans.
Lots of plans. They have pamphlets for all of them, like with like a whole kind of go through of, net zero 2030, and there's a lot more that they have going on. I
mean, I think
they're mega cities.
The reason why I brought up the concern that I have of trying to find the right balance between, conspiratorial thinking and incentive thinking is to find a way to express it in a way that can be more, more persuasive to people who don't see it. Like it's a big conspiracy, right? And
I mean, which absolutely makes sense.
And because I mean, in my own family, I mean, people don't agree with it, and think I'm off my rocker to a certain degree when I talk about stuff.
Can I add something to that real quick? Because
sure.
One of the I think there's a problem that occurs there. It's something I've noticed trying to just because like you said it right there, what we see, right? Because we see something happening. And everybody wants to be like, well, be explicit. What's happening? And it's like, I'm not in a position to be explicit here. And first off, even if I were, you didn't want to say that stuff online, like, but I mean, it's.
See, they're gonna.
To some sense.
Sorry, my son ran in.
Hey, what's up, young man?
Say hi. Hi. This is Jackson.
Hi, Jackson. How old are you, Jackson?
He's 4.
4?
He can't hear you.
Oh, okay.
All right. He lost interest in me. I'm actually going to shut the door.
It's cute.
Let's see, where was that? Oh, so yeah, but I do think that you're kind of hitting on a really important thing. There's something that we see, and and to a real effect, the best that we can kind of do is point at it, because what the hell do we know, right? I mean, we all have our experiences and whatnot, and no matter how experienced that may be, who are we really compared to that level of people in the world? I don't know if I like saying it that way, but I think that kind of gets my point across.
I think I know what you're trying to say.
Nobody here, nobody here is invited to Davos. Nobody here is meeting with world leaders. And so, we see these things happen and these patterns occur. We're just kind of like, you guys, like, how many coincidences does it take before you start to wonder? And and I don't think, and every time I try to like point it out to somebody, I get this, we'll be explicit. What is it that's happening? And it's like, dude, I don't know what it is that's happening explicitly.
But your spidey sense is tingling, right?
Yeah, like I'm just.
Exactly.
Like when you've got OSHA doing what they're doing with the jab mandates. I got you, man. You know, OSHA doing what they're doing with the jab mandates, and Congress doing what they're doing with the $600 influx. We're going to track everything, and you know, and everything, and it's all these little, it's all these little things that in total make you go, and a lot of people just don't see it, and I don't know why that is, and so I know exactly what you mean about as far as, you know, it's a very difficult thing to try and do, to try and highlight what we're seeing, because the first place that people go to is that we're trying to tell them that there's some specific thing happening. We've got some conspiracy theory that we want them to believe. And I'm like, dude, no, I just want you to pay attention.
Yeah. I mean, exactly. I get in conversations with my wife, and she's primarily the one who doesn't think I'm a little bit off my rocker. But she probably is right to a certain degree.
I mean, after the last few years, we're probably all off our rockers a bit.
Right.
We've been blasted with so much propaganda.
And I can understand where she's coming from, you know, because sometimes the question is, who's they? You know what I mean? Because when you phrase it like that,
Bill Gates.
It does sound a little bit nuts, right? And so, you know, and then I get to this notion. Well, you know, if I can't sort of persuade or make my thoughts and beliefs understood by someone who's that close to me, how am I going to convince anybody else?
Yeah, which that makes actually a lot of sense. So I know that I was tongue-in-cheek joking about Bill Gates just a second ago, but I mean, that's another name, like, where it's like you bring it up and people are just like, oh, they're just gonna shut down. They're like, oh, you're one of those.
Yeah.
And it's pretty damn difficult to be able to go through and be like, no, I've read through a lot of the SEC filings, like, relatively consistently. I'll do that on a weekly, bi-weekly basis. And this is kind of what's going on. These are the players that are kind of like just in everything. But it's so boring. I mean, they're very boring filings. And so no one wants to hear about them, and no one's going to be interested in even and it's not until something happens and it's like, what just happened? It's like, well, I mean,
are you familiar with the term security through obscurity?
Yeah, I was thinking the exact same thing. Right,
yeah, because that's what a lot of it is, right? Because you can be honest in all those filings, but you plan it in so much jargon BS that nobody's going to read it with any real attention span, except for the people that are like, what is happening, right?
Yeah.
Because, you know, but then it could go to the other way as well, because we're people and we have a tendency to fill in the things that we don't know. And I'm not saying that anybody necessarily here is doing that, because I don't think anybody is, because nobody here is trying to tell people. I don't think anybody that I see listed up here is really trying to tell people what is specifically happening, as much as it is like just trying to tell people, like, just pay attention, just like watch for a little bit.
So one thing that I'm actually going to be, and I'm sure none of y'all have heard about any of this yet. I don't even know like what'll come of it. But one thing that I have been seeing, like, within that SEC filings regarding mRNA technology, is a few different companies on the agricultural side. So I don't know what that means. Like, I don't know what that technology looks like, or how good or potentially bad it is. Like, I don't know any of that, but it is very interesting to me just how that technology is. I mean, it's going into everything, like everything that, I mean, there's so much.
They're just ramming it down, right? They're just ramming it down. It's like, I spent a good portion of my professional career working on cutting edge technology for the government, and which is what this is. And everybody's just like, oh, we're good to go. And I'm like, hold up. That's like, you're not, like, that is not, no, like, because even stuff like when you, especially when you get into like, you know, if you think about it, a lot, I shouldn't say most, although probably most cutting edge technology occurs within the defense domain, right? Because that's where most of the money is. And And I've been involved in projects that are getting fielded, like cutting edge technology fielded in the warfighter domain. And the shit doesn't work but like half the time. And so, I know nothing about vaccines. I know nothing about medicine. Like, I had no area expertise whatsoever. But I understand cutting edge technology on, being funded by government. And I understand how that process at the front edge works. And it's like, everybody's just willing to just throw this. And like, my big thing is, where it's like, oh, everybody should take the vaccine. I was like, okay, but what if somebody got something wrong? How does that look? Right? They want to start throwing into foods. Okay, but what if somebody's wrong? Because people are always wrong. And it's just, there's this risk cost benefit analysis that's not being done in any way that makes any sense with any of it.
And even to this day, I agree with the emergency use authorization for the vaccine. I don't agree with the scope that they decided to go with.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
But it absolutely, I mean, still, like, it makes sense to me that it was rolled out for especially the elderly demographics. And frankly, even adults, like any adults, I think that they should have had the option, but there was a lot of dishonesty around. I mean, they're still, the CDC director is blatantly saying that it is absolutely, without a doubt, safe for pregnant and breastfeeding.
How would they know this in such a short period of time?
They don't.
Exactly.
They don't.
Yeah, exactly.
They don't. Like, there is no way that they can know that. I mean, maybe that is the case. Maybe what she's saying is true.
But we're just now hitting like the 9-month mark for pregnancy with the vaccine. Like how? Yeah, exactly. Like
there's no way that they could know this.
It's not possible.
And the thing that's so aggravating about it is it's like they take us all for fools. Like we can't think this, right? Can't think enough for ourselves to be able to decide. You know what? You can't possibly know this. You know what I mean? It's just something to behold.
Well, you're putting everyone else at risk if you don't get vaccinated, don't you know?
We don't want to go that route. I'll get us all freaking banned.
I mean, the vaccine is very effective unless you're around people who are unvaccinated. And then it becomes less effective, but it's still very effective. But that's why we're still
I threw this argument at someone not too long ago because I was talking about, because this whole the vaccine.
JP Sears had the best skit ever on it. Like it was like
a life jacket. Oh yeah, I saw that recently. That was really good. That was really good. Yeah. But like I was talking to someone about it and like, well, it makes sense. Like, the vaccine won't be as effective unless everybody has it. And I was like, dude, I have had many vaccines in my life, and that was never the case. I was like, when I went over to Iraq in 2003 and we had to get vaccines to protect us against the stuff that was there. At no point in any of that was there any discussion about we needed to vaccinate the local population for the vaccines to work, because the vaccines inoculate you against the infection. And we've completely moved away from that into like, oh, well, unless everybody's vaccinated, it will work. I'm like,
well, I mean, I think that there is some science around, the different classes of viruses, right? Like, for example, something like a respiratory virus can be, becomes endemic in a way that polio can be eradicated, right? Whereas the other one can't. So, there are these differences, but at the same time, it's kind of like there
were some polio failure. Actually, there was But
I also
I'm all for like the polio vaccine. I'm definitely
right. But I mean, generally speaking, it is pretty much smallpox, polio. Some of these, they're no longer endemic, right? At least not in first world countries. But in ways that these coronaviruses, I don't think can be, eliminated. They're just
right.
I don't know. It's my understanding of it.
They've stopped inoculating for smallpox. I think. I mean, I don't have the smallpox.
I got it. That was the worst vaccine. You don't ever get. Oh, it sucks so bad.
My mom still has the scar.
Yeah, I'm sure it's better than having actual smallpox, but man, did it suck. Like you just, I don't want to get into
Is that
it.
the
Like,
one where you have the divot in your shoulder?
yeah, so they
Oh,
give
okay. I
you
had that so long ago, I don't even remember it.
yeah, and so my mom has it. They were giving it in the 60s, I think. I think they stopped giving it in the 70s. I had it when we went over in 03. And it's like a blister forms. And like
Yeah.
you can't touch
Yeah.
a blister, but it's the itchiest thing in the world. And for weeks, you're just like,
What year were you born?
I was born in 82, but I got it when I went to Iraq in 03.
Oh, okay. I
We
was
got it
born in
then.
68, so I'm probably the oldest one here. So I had it.
Yeah, my mom had it too. But you know,
I'm 21. I'm kidding. I'm not.
but yeah, it's one of those things where that always bothered me with it when it's like the flu shot, right? You know, I mean, and like to what you were saying, Jeff, that you know, there's some logic there that, you know, doesn't eradicate the risk of infection or disease. It just minimizes it. So if enough people get it, you know, the overall statistical droppage is enough to like not overwhelm hospitals or whatever. But my thing is, at the end of the day,
Jackson sounds like he's back.
He is back. Yep, there he is.
Oh, there
Yeah, I mean, my background actually is statistics, and you know, I can appreciate a lot of the statistical arguments that are being made. Some of them to me are just dumb, though. I mean, because you have to understand, not only do you know what's the probability if you get infected that you go to the hospital or that you suffer a fatality. You also have to factor in the probability you get infected in the first place.
Right. Yeah.
As an independent
That's
probability,
actually,
and it's just,
yeah.
you know.
And that's actually been a huge issue that I've thought about with this vaccine. It's like, okay, so if we're not preventing transmission and it's like, yes. So most likely if you get vaccinated and you end up catching COVID, then it's going to be lesser symptoms or whatever. But you're still talking about like so many different probabilities of different situations. Like it's not like, how can you say that it is 95% effective at this point?
Well, they're doing it. So I used to argue with engineers about this, right? Well, so what they're doing is they're trying to take lab tests and equivocate that to like real world environments, and then they're trying to, you know, and it's a little bit of a hand switch that happens there, I think, and because the problem is in my opinion, we don't, and back me up, Jeff. No, you probably got me beat way far in statistics, but I've been learning. We don't have the data to really be able to say one way or the other in the real world yet. We just don't have the time and the data.
Well, and they're not actually tracking it. I've been tracking enough states and I've been tracking the CDC to know that for a fact, there's at least half the states are not reporting COVID hospitalizations versus like vaccinated versus unvaccinated to the CDC, because it's not a requirement that they have. And then the other piece, we're not tracking the way that we're tracking who is vaccinated versus who is unvaccinated. There's no differentiation between partially vaccinated. There's a few factors that come into play there. So there's Israel's better. The UK is better to look at. There are a few states that are decent to look at, although you're not going to have the breakdown of like partial vaccinated. Oregon, I know, is good. I believe Maine is as well. There's a few of them, but you can't look at the US as a whole. Like you can't look at the CDC data and take it at face value.
I mean, ultimately, if you really think about what SARS-CoV-2 is, right? I mean, it's a very virulent cold virus that's sort of in the respiratory class with flus and colds, right? And, you know, I didn't start getting the flu vaccine until I had kids, right? And I've gotten the flu a number of times in my life, and it's like, it just seems like the level of insistence that we all get vaccinated is just, I mean, how much worse is this to a really bad flu season? What? It's certainly not so much worse that that's even in the ballpark of something that comes out of a Stephen King novel, for crying out loud.
The data is so poor with how like that, because they changed how things are being reported, that honestly the only way that we're going to be able to even look like even piece it together at some point is when we start looking at excess deaths as a whole and what that looks like within each age range, because they changed how it's being reported. So a COVID death, I mean, that's the reason why.
Well, that's the other thing too, right? They keep changing how things are reported. And when we have this inconsistency across reporting, we have this dirty data, and it's just, how are you supposed to trust any of it?
Yeah. So ultimately, the only way that we're even going to be able to like look at it like from it's going to have to be based on excess deaths, and it's going to have to probably be a few years down the road. But even there's some issues. I mean, I suppose looking at different age groups will play a factor, but there's so many variables that were changed this past year that how are you even able to get accurate data from that perspective of, you know, exactly, like it's not like even if say we have a spike in deaths in you know the 20 to 30 crowd within like over the year of 2020 to 2021, I mean, we're not able to automatically attribute that to COVID. I mean, there's so many different variables that were forcibly changed.
Yeah, all human data. I actually, you know, spent almost 10 years working in pharma. I worked for Pfizer for almost 10 years, and not as a statistician, as an engineer. But I got into it because I did my master's in statistics and did a summer internship with Bristol Myers Squibb, and then that's how I kind of got enough experience to kind of get into sort of the pharma area. And you know, even in the courses that I had on clinical trials and things like that, you know, human data is very notoriously dirty and complicated, right?
Yeah.
And so you can obfuscate so much. You know, first of all, you could lie so much with statistics unless you really know what you're doing, you know, and understand. I don't know. Did you guys listen to the Joe Rogan, Alex Berenson?
Not the whole thing yet. I saw the clip.
Right.
I'm almost done with it, and then I need to listen to Sanjay Gupta afterwards.
Yeah, I started that one actually, but you know, I have a master's in statistics, and probability was probably mathematical probability was probably my best subject. It was pretty good at it, and even then, I had to really listen and pay attention to the details of what Alex was saying to understand the statistical arguments. And because of that, even someone who's experienced and understands, you know, the language, it's still complicated, right? So that's how they're able to, that's how they, meaning the, you know, public health industry, can obfuscate so much through statistics. It's very easy to do it.
Oh, so easy. I mean, all you have to do is, let's just look at 2021. Yeah, 95% of the people who have died in 2021 who have died from COVID have been unvaccinated. It's like, well, no shit. Because when did we start? Like you would have to do an integral formula. I mean, there would have to be a calculus formula that you're actually applying to this. It's not that simple. It's like, I mean,
yeah, no, I hear what you're saying. Yeah, it's very easy to the whole trick to do it properly is you have to put the numbers into perspective and compare apples to apples, right? And it's so easy to compare apples to oranges, and people do it intentionally when they're advocating for something, right?
It's like this is just kind of, I don't know. It's like, so when I was taking my physics classes, and freshman, sophomore, I was like, okay, so let's solve for this, neglect air friction. And it's like, okay, and so of course you're thinking like, okay, so you do the kinematic equation, whatever. But of course you're thinking like, well, what if we don't neglect air friction or air resistance? And then you get up to a higher level of physics, and you're like, oh, okay. This is the reason why, and I don't want to and I want to neglect air resistance moving forward, because it is very messy once you start.
You get into the mathematics of it becomes so complicated. The only way
Yes.
you can solve them is through Monte Carlo simulation and
Yeah.
that kind of thing. You can't solve them in closed form and
Absolutely
derive.
not,
Yeah, right. Exactly. That's exactly right.
yeah. I mean, I am sure that you are significantly better than I would be at that, but yeah, I mean, because yeah, you're gonna have variation. I mean, every day, like just basically as you're going through people getting vaccinated or whatever, being able to account for that, you can't just take this simple like equation of, oh, well, since January, there's been X amount of unvaccinated people who've been hospitalized and died versus vaccinated individuals.
Yeah.
It is strange to me, by the way, that, I mean, I don't understand, nor have I ever done complex statistics like it sounds like you have, but I can at least conceptualize the fact that would have to be the case, and kind of question the end number of 95% or 98% or whatever they feel like throwing out there. And it's like, okay, well, how did you get to that?
Yeah, I mean, most of like this is one of the things I've actually asked for, not asked anybody, but just in personal conversations with people, is suggesting that what we really need in high school is to have like a basic statistics. And by basic, what I mean is not like the mathematical statistics, but being able to teach people to be able to detect bullshit. That level of stuff, and economics. And if we could find ways to get people at least the common sense, intuition, to could teach the intuition of knowing when you're doing apples to apples. Hey, how's it going? And whereas apples to oranges, and showing how people can obfuscate and lie through these things. I think that we would go a long way in education to, defeat the ability of people to pull wool over people's eyes. I don't know what you think about that, but
like I would like, I see where you're going with that, but I also at the same time, like, I think it's just so much easier. Like, I think it's so much easier to just, I mean, there's a lot of complexity behind, I guess, behind a lot of those statistical lies or situation. And a lot of times they may not even necessarily be lies. They're just, that's just
not to cut
how
you
they're
off,
applying them.
but this Jeff kind of intrigued me because he's a statistics guy, right? And I found that I got a bunch of those indoctrinated, high level degree things that people like to. I like to tell people when they try to challenge me on things, I'll be like, I got like 3-4 degrees and like 6 certifications. Who cares? I Googled them all. But what one thing that interested me a lot was earlier they was throwing out this statistic that 99% of the hospitalized or were unvaxxed, which at the time they were toting about a 60% vaccination rate, right? So I'm saying you're saying that 40% of the population is comprising 99% of the people currently in the hospital. That's almost statistically to me like hitting the lottery. I'm like, that's almost impossible.
Yeah, I mean,
that's the other thing. How do we have the exact same patterns from last year? And okay, maybe we can blame it on Delta. And I'm open to that argument.
I wouldn't even do that, because 9 times out of 10, if a virus mutates, this has never happened where a virus mutates and gets stronger, particularly a coronavirus. It does not happen. It's almost
not consistent with their evolutionary patterns. Right?
No, it doesn't.
I'm open to hearing that argument. I'm not gonna be closed off to it, and it has been very consistent from within every single region. And I was actually tracking the regions. I mean, so when they were, what was it, like a month ago, they were like, oh my God, Florida and Texas, like everyone's dying because look at, and I was like, no, this is
everyone's dying.
This is the exact same peak that it was this time last year. Lo and behold, same thing is happening currently within the Northwest. And you know what? In the Northeast, they're going to be getting hit here in probably about December, January. So
have you any of you guys ever followed Tom Woods?
Yeah, I follow Tom Woods.
Yeah, and his challenge that he had on being able to detect the efficacy of masks. I forget what it is. I'd have to go back and listen to one of his podcasts where he talks about it. But, basically when you show them side by side, and you compare apples to apples of states that are close to each other with different policies, and you see that they follow the exact same patterns.
Yeah.
It just goes to exactly what Berenson says, virus gonna virus, right?
Yeah.
And it's, yeah.
Yeah. And with Berenson in particular, and then there's a couple heretics that I have followed early on. Geertz, do you know who I'm talking? Von der Bosch. I don't know if I'm saying it. He's one of the scientists, where he was talking about ADE potentially happening, and which I'm not sure.
What is that? I've heard Alex mention that. What is ADE? I just didn't pay close attention to it.
So like with RSV, they've actually tried to develop a vaccine for that in the past, and what happened when they did do that was the individual, or like the babies who were vaccinated, when like another strain came along, they were actually more adversely affected. This is also true in natural infections. I believe dengue fever would be one, but then there's Marek's disease within chickens, I think, where I don't know if they vaccinate chickens or what they do with chickens, but where that has also been the case. And so it's actually something that the FDA is watching for very closely, but we're all supposed to pretend absolutely cannot happen. Geertz he's been pretty adamantly sounding the alarm on that one. I don't know if if his prediction's going to end up being accurate. What has come accurate with his predictions is he was like, this is a leaky vaccine and it's ultimately not going to do anything. But what hasn't, at least thus far, come to fruition is that, like the vaccinated individuals aren't getting like a worse, they're not getting sicker than necessarily an unvaccinated individual. So that is something that, like, I don't know. There's been a few that
research a little bit more to understand it better.
It looks like it's because I had seen this before and wasn't too up on it. I think the general gist of it is that the vaccine ends up having kind of the opposite effect of the intent, because what it does is it basically
it's so narrow.
It modifies the immune system in a very specific way.
Yeah.
That any variation from that way actually makes the immune system unable to respond at all.
Right. So and so what it is, it sounds like the worst special case of a vaccine-driven evolution of the virus. Right. The vaccine is driving the virus to evolve in ways to beat it, And if it evolves in particularly nasty ways, that it sounds like that's what you were describing. Maybe
Well,
Yeah,
I think it's more just it basically handicaps the immune system. I don't know.
okay. All right.
I'm
well,
looking at Wikipedia here, trying to.
yeah,
Okay.
there's a few different. I'm not even going to pretend to. All I know, like I am following. He's one scientist that I do follow. I mean, he's been he's worked actually for Pfizer, actually Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation as well. So he has the credentials. So he just has a counterpoint of view, and so he's been someone that I've found very interesting. And I don't know why we're discounting all these different positions that could potentially come true when it is obvious, even to like a lay person like me who is not into virology, like that these things can't be known.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah, that I think is probably one of the most frustrating things I find about our current sort of technocratic patterns we've fallen into, and the rule by experts and their machinations within the deep state, for lack of a better way to express this, right?
yeah.
And is that the worst thing about them is that they always overstate how certain they are of things.
Oh God. Well,
That's the
Fauci
worst
especially.
aspect of it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if they would just say, hey, we're with the government, we're trying to do our best, and we make mistakes, and they admit to them,
Or
earlier,
honestly,
then I think that it wouldn't nearly be this problematic. So how much of this is actually
yeah.
truly driven by machinations of Davos type people, and how much of this is sort of driven by just the natural incentives of people trying to cover their ass?
I'm gonna go with both, actually.
It's probably
Probably
both, right?
Yeah,
It's a
probably
complex.
There's
That's what I was
definitely
getting
a lot
at.
of stuff,
A
yeah.
complex
Yeah.
intertwining of all these different kinds of
For
incentives.
sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I am sure that all of the countries across the globe coincidentally came up with Build Back Better all on their
Yeah.
own. That was
Agree with
pretty
you on that one.
Coincidence.
That's
Just a
weird.
coincidence.
Yeah, exactly.
A buddy of mine
Right.
showed.
That's a whole. Oh, sorry. I was just saying that's a whole thing. The Build Back Better thing. That's a whole topic.
This was probably about maybe 6 months to a year before COVID. A buddy of mine was showing, it was like a YouTube thing where it was like, I don't even remember the context of it. So I apologize for rambling, but it was something like, all these different news stations, and they were local news stations, all saying the exact same things. And, and so you're thinking to yourself, okay, I suppose if they were all like, let's say ABC, right? Then news affiliates, right? Then maybe they would have gotten something that, the corporate headquarters had written and said, here, all you guys read this. But it wasn't just the same under the same corporation. It was different ones.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, I do recall there was it was a brief controversy. I think this was a couple years back, like where it was Sinclair and like all the affiliate local state, like they all had the same statement at the end. And that I didn't find so weird because I was like, well, they're all under the same umbrella. But when you have every single news station.
Are you talking about that video? Yeah, are you
right?
talking about the video had like the local news stations, and it was like it started off with one, and then it grew, and it had like the whole big panorama. Yeah. I love that one because people are like, oh, that's actually a Fox affiliate. I'm like, man, you are missing the point of what we are trying to tell you.
Yeah.
But the same thing though, right? Like that, it's one thing for it to be a bunch of different media stations that fall under a conglomerate compared to, multiple countries throughout the world at the same time. It's like that, like to our knowledge, does not fall under a central corporate banner head.
Yeah.
And so
I actually remember it now.
Happen at once is very, no, I was just saying, to see that happen at once is very, that was very off-putting last year.
I'm actually remembering now the topic. it was they were all coming together to say the same thing about how they were condemning racism, with Donald Trump as president, not calling him out specifically, but just calling out this issue of white supremacy and racism. And it was all the same language. I mean, the word almost to the words identical from all these different affiliates. They're not even under the same corporate umbrella. I can understand, like I said, if they were under the same corporation, okay, so headquarters wrote it and they all read it.
Yeah.
But
so
when
Cheryl
they're all
Atkinson
under different corporate headquarters, that's weird.
So Cheryl Atkinson, it's a speech that she did, I believe it was either Heritage or what is that one? There's a college that is like the I can't remember the name of the college. It's basically a liberal arts college, but it's conservative, and they'll put talks up.
I know which one you're talking about.
So she did a speech there, and it was specifically on that topic because she was within the corporate media for the majority of her career.
Right.
Very interesting talk. Definitely recommend checking that one out.
Yeah, I think it sounds. Is it Claremont or something like that? Yeah,
something like that. I can't remember.
Yeah, it's escaping me in the moment. Yeah. Too. I know what you mean.
But yeah, it was really interesting talk. But yeah, I mean, but yeah, back to just how like all the countries, and it was like all of a sudden, like everyone was on the same page. And I don't even know what the fuck Australia is currently doing. Like, I don't think they're going to be free again. Like, I think they're just, sorry, Australia.
Yeah, that I've been telling people. I mean, you all have seen my tweets. They're going to regret getting rid of those guns. I hate to say that, but it's very weird over there, and I don't. I'll save that comment for offline. I got something I can tell you all, but I don't want to do it on here. We're to be seen.
Understandable. Like there's certain things that, like vaccine. Well, I don't even want to say. Well, I guess they would be vaccine mandates. So childhood vaccines, where, and honestly, my perspective has changed a little bit on this. I don't like. I'm all for childhood vaccines. Like
there's nothing wrong with vaccines in general.
Yeah. Absolutely down for that, but this entire experience has shifted my thought process a little bit, and I've become a little bit more sympathetic towards like parents or families where that's just not for them. And
none of this should be mandatory.
I'd never thought about it in the past, and this entire situation is definitely.
Oh, for real. Like, let me tell you, I cannot tell you how many years I've made fun of anti-vax people.
Yeah.
And finding myself being called anti-vax, I'm like, you sly people.
I know.
Yeah.
I know, right?
I think that you want to be able to see the things, in my opinion, you want to be able to persuade people that it's in their best interest.
Mm-hmm.
And you want to be able to make an argument that they can understand and that they can appreciate. But when you're forcing it down on all these kinds of people, I mean, you're just guaranteeing that you're going to feed conspiracy theories.
Especially when they're failing
for them.
Yeah. Well, I think, I mean, to say nothing of the fact that there's at least in some significant portion of people, myself is included in that group, that the more you tell me I have to do something, the very much less I'm going to do it. Sorry, like maybe it's a character flaw. I don't know.
Oh, no,
I have to do something, and my response is going to be like, no.
At this point, with everything that's like, at this point, I'd be like, you know what? I don't give a shit. If this were something where I had a 50% chance of dying at this point, I would, okay, that's probably overstating a little bit. Okay, maybe a lot, but still, like, I am sorry. I am not going to, I will cut my nose off before I'm going to give in to like the demands
of peer pressure.
Yeah.
We grew up in a generation where we were told, like, don't give in to peer pressure.
Yeah.
And that's what all this is. It's peer pressure. You need to do this. You need to do this.
It's not even, it's more than just peer pressure. It's like, I think really what it boils down to is I am significantly more afraid of, sorry about my son. I'm significantly more afraid of.
Gives it that real vibe.
Yeah, yeah, there we go. Of like giving this, I mean, it's so easy to say like, it's just one mandate. We're in the middle of a pandemic. And it's like, okay, but
Bro,
let's
he's
talk.
Tarzan in
Yeah.
the background.
Yeah, I know he's Tarzan back there. So I am significantly more afraid about giving up those freedoms towards like bodily autonomy, specifically when it comes to like what medical procedures are being demanded of me and what I have to present.
Yeah. There's
as
something
far
bigger at
as-
stake here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you.
For sure.
And I actually had the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. So I've been vaccinated, you know, and it's like, you know, but at the same time, I don't think that anyone should be forced into it. It's crazy.
Mean, had I not gotten COVID, I mean, actually, you know what? I don't think I would have gotten vaccinated at this point. If the data had looked a little bit better, come
if
like
July, if it hadn't gone the way it had with the coercion,
right? Well, not only the coercion, but just the data that has been coming out. Then yes, I would have gotten vaccinated.
Like
probably.
My best friend had gotten it back in February. He's a nurse. He had talked to a doctor about it, and he was like, "All right," and so he got it. But we were just talking about it last night even. And he was just like, dude, he was like, you know, I went and got it. He was like, you know, and I don't regret it. He was like, because it was the smart decision to make. He was like, but now they're pulling all this whole like, oh, you need a booster. And he's like, nope, sorry. You got me. I went and did it.
No.
Like I'm not playing this continual time
That's
for
how
your
I feel.
next shot game.
Yep.
You know, and it's because that's what it is it turns into this, it's what's the term they use? The
slippery slope.
Well, slippery residual income, basically.
Oh,
right?
I got it.
Oh yeah.
It's like get you on those subscription payment plans. Is how he was phrasing. He's like, you're not getting me into that trap. He was like, you know, he's like, I went and got it, and he was like, and he's a nurse. He's been around it. You know, he's been all around it. He's like, I've either already had it, not been a big deal, or you know, the vaccine is working, and whatever the case, he was like, I'm not playing this. Oh, time for my 6-month shot game. He was like,
yeah,
it's just it's a ripoff at some point.
Well, like I said, when I had, sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say my brother, who he's a very cautious individual. Him and his wife, they just had their first child. They're both cautious, kind of recluses, and then very liberal on top of it. So you can imagine. So they so he was about not getting vaccinated, and I was like, look, I was like, this is a decision based on these reasons. It's not political for me. There was someone that I knew who had an adverse effect, and then also I had COVID. Those are the two main reasons, and then also because they're trying to tell me that I should get it. So that might be a little political, but
yeah,
regardless. So he was getting legitimately upset with me, like to the point where he was basically like, he's like, I don't want to see you. And I mean, honestly, like we ended up like making up, like we did have a good conversation where I was like, look, I have no problem getting a COVID test before I come see you. If that makes you guys feel better, like that's absolutely something that I am fine with doing. But I'm sorry, I'm not going to take any medication just to make you feel better.
I think that's the hardest part about all this is how it's dividing real relationships.
Exactly.
You know? And it sucks because it's not there's no way to be able to put blame on one side of the relationship or the other, because you know, to some extent, you know, I mean, I've lost friends over the past year and a half, and I don't blame them. I just don't share the trust that they share in the systems that they're believing. And,
Yeah.
and it sucks that their relationship with that information system was apparently more trustworthy to them than our relationship. But, it just sucks all around, because they're quite literally destroying real human relationships over this nonsense. And it sucks, because we can't, I'm sure everybody on here and everybody listening to this has somebody they can think of that, that they've at the very least had strained relationships over this. And I think that's what annoys me the most about all of it. Like, take everything else away. The fact that whoever is doing this, for whatever reason, the way they're doing it, how it's going out, whatever, like, at the end of the day, they're mucking up people's real lives for
That's right. Exactly.
whatever their personal
It's
reason.
horrific. It really is. It's terrible.
It's horrible, man. I mean, it really just disgusts me that, somebody would put whatever it is that they're putting above it, but they're putting it above that real human relationship. And I don't know, to me, that's really the biggest, that's the real pandemic, right? Like, the virus is real. Don't be wrong. I'm not never say it ain't. I hate people are like, oh, it's a fake, but no, whatever. I had it. That shit sucks. It's a horrible bug. But what it's turned us into and against each other, I think, is really the worst part of all of it.
Yeah. Well, on that note, I think we've reached the end, right?
We have reached the end.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that I guess that's a great last word, Jeremy, because I think that's the worst thing about this. I agree with you 100%.
Yeah, man. It just, I don't know if we're still recording to be included or not, but that's the thing that's really bothered me the most. All of this is I've lost friends, not even just on Twitter, but I mean, in real life.
Yeah.
I have friends that I can't talk
where
to.
It matters.
Yeah. Because, I don't buy into the same stuff that they do. And, and like, I can't even talk to, like I was talking about Facebook earlier. I can't talk to people on Facebook anymore. Like, oh, we get it, anti-vaxxer. And I'm like, what the fuck, bro? Like, like, we went to high school together, and this is how you're going to communicate with me? But, whatever. I can't.
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah. Me and my brother, like, we've had full on, like, where it's just been, and it's been insane that it's so dividing. I mean, fortunately, I think that. I think that we're, like, at a spot now where
that's good.
Where we talked through it, but it was one of those where it was like, I mean, on my end, I was like, this isn't a political position for me.
Yeah.
I was like, and I know it's not all a political, like, it's not a political position for you as far as, like, you're concerned about the virus. So I will do what I can do to accommodate and, like, make you comfortable, like, with, me coming around and, like, seeing y'all. But this is going to be, like, demanding I get a medical procedure. I'm sorry, that is crossing the line.
You got it.
Good question.
Well, it was nice meeting you, folks. I have to drop out. And maybe we could do it again sometime. I liked it. It was something different.
Yeah, definitely.
It's awesome to talk to you all face to face. Maybe screen, but still, it's awesome to.
I'll be putting this on Twitter. I'm hoping you guys will retweet it, tweet it.
We post show now.
It's nice to meet you, Jeremy, and nice to meet you, Amy. John,
nice to meet you.
I just want to listen. It was nice to meet you.
Yeah, I just want to listen. Yeah.
Yep. Take care. And D-Web.
Yo, thank you. Appreciate it, brother.
Bye.
Bye.
Are you getting off too, Amy?
I'll probably be on for like 5 more minutes, but we'll stop recording here.
Yeah, I was. So this is, I saw this your second episode.
This is actually going to be the format that I'm going to be going with.
It's cool format.
Like, I feel like, I mean, for one, I feel like I'm not interesting enough to, like, carry a full hour just on my own. And then 2, I mean, there's so many podcasts out there, and just having, like, I feel like this is a little bit different than a lot of the other ones out there, or some of them, who knows?
For sure. I mean, hey, I've been thinking about it for a couple of years now. about doing something. I just don't know. I don't know. Part of it now, the last year is I'm in my parents. I don't know if I want to start a podcast living at my parents' house. So I just started a job, and so I'll have my own in here in short enough. But you know, I struggle because part of me doesn't want to do something like that. I like kind of being a nobody, and like I'm terrified that I would do a podcast and not be a nobody anymore. Like I'm just terrified.
I get that. And, like that is something that, because yeah, there's, especially if you, I mean, D seems to think otherwise. I don't know if I'll ever be popular enough to not be a nobody, but like I get that concern for sure of like.
Yeah, it's like what I'm worried about. Because so what I've been thinking about recently, and it sounds like you're kind of doing the same thing, actually, which is what it really kind of it's hilarious to me, is where it's like if I do a podcast, I kind of just want to do a podcast to the people I talk with on Twitter.
Right? Yeah.
Because like these are the people I've lived with through the nonsense for the last few years. Let's talk about the nonsense we've lived through. And it may never get more than a couple hundred views, and I'm perfectly fine with that. I just want to have the conversations. But what I am kind of legitimately a little bit terrified about is if it like catches, because it makes me very uncomfortable because I know me and I know who I am. And so like, if I got any bit to a point of notoriety where someone comes at me like a canceling, like, oh, it's all like fucking Donkey Kong. Like my marine mouth will not be able to shut up, and it'll be a lot of drama, and I don't like drama. But I'm probably going to eventually do something kind of like this, even if it's nothing more than just talking to the people that have made an impression on me on Twitter over the last few years, because I think it'd be a lot of fun. I've been thinking more doing like a one-on-one. And basically
kind of like the Joe Rogan kind of setup.
I don't know. I mean, I don't want to copy anybody's format. That's one of the things I've been struggling over. And like one of the ideas I've had is and I have to kind of widen it open a little bit. But one of the things that because you've seen my tweets, I've kind of fallen into the religious stuff, which
I have. Yeah.
Oh,
no one is more surprised than me.
Is that Jeremy Spratlin?
That is. What's up, bro?
Oh, I didn't know.
I wondered earlier, and I was like, "Hey, man, nice to meet you." You're like, "Yeah, you too, man." I was like, "Oh, okay." Like that.
Hey, I'm gonna run the outro music because I got to end the recording. But stay tuned because I want to do a network. I've been talking to Amy about this, and I want to.
Hell yeah, bro! Let's talk.
I want to talk to you. But let me run this fucking outro, and I'm gonna get at you.
All right, man.
Okay, you guys run. You run that. I have to run downstairs real quickly. I'll be right back.
All right, hold on.
Welcome to the edge of the hole of abyss where we stand on the ledge and we hope we don't slip, but we all try to cope, not focused on shit, always scoped on the fix that is fixed to our wrist, and the cyst that persists from the clicks that we get is a ship that's adrift in the midst of the grift. What a trick, what a gift, what I miss, shit, ignorance is bliss. Welcome to the realm where they complicate pursuits, confiscate the truth to indoctrinate the youth, got us hopped up on the juice cause the doctor's about to loot. Posture of imposters cause our options are acute, playing possum for the boot. It's lost in the obtuse, you constantly and constant for